Innovator.
Ahead of his time.
Flamboyant.
Great ball player.
Breathtaking.
Awesome.
Pete Maravich was born on June 22, 1947, in the steel town of Aliquippa, Pennsylvania. His father, Peter, at the time of his son's birth, was just wrapping up his short professional basketball career. Regretful how his career ended without success, Peter dreamed of having his son fulfill what he could not. His goal was to instill a love of basketball in his young son, Pete. His method of doing this was very unique. Instead of encouraging Pete to play, he had his son watch the window as he would practice outside, making it look as fun as possible, but not allowing Pete to join in. For a while, Peter would not allow his son to play, but when he finally did, he taught him everything he knew. At this time, Peter had entered coaching and took his job home with him in the form of training Pete.
Pete defined passionate. He would spend countless hours every single day working on the fundamentals of basketball. The two were an inseparable entity. His first chance to show off his incredible work ethic and resulting skill was at Daniel High School in Central South Carolina. He became a member of their varsity team a season before he was even able to attend the school. Despite his young age, Pete was dominant. Because of his father's coaching career, the family moved around, and Pete ended up playing at 3 different high schools by the time he graduated. At this time, he earned the nickname of Pistol, given to him by the way in which he shot the ball. Pistol Pete in his last season before college averaged 33 points per game.
When it came time to his decision on where to play, Pete had always wanted to go to West Virginia. However, his dad had been made the head basketball coach at LSU and had offered him a scholarship. Peter reportedly said, "If you don't sign this, don't ever come into my house again." Pete joined the Tigers the next fall.
At the time, the NCAA had a regulation that didn't allow freshmen to play on the varsity team. Therefore, Pete was forced to play on the freshman team. The lower level of competition proved easy for Pete, and ended the year having averaged 43.6 points per game, as well as 10.4 rebounds per game. His next 3 years were nothing but legendary.
During his sophomore season, Pete assumed the starting guard position on the varsity team. Even though it was only his first year on it, there was no one who came close to his skill level. LSU at the time had a very bad basketball team. The previous year, they had gone a measly 3-20. This changed following Pete's arrival to the team. In his 3 years of playing for LSU's varsity team, they never had a losing record and even posted a 22-10 record during his senior season. The turnaround was based only on Pete's incredible ability to perform. He left college a 3-time consensus All-American and held the NCAA men's basketball record in points per game with 44.2 and overall points with 3,667.
Happy to announce that Pete Maravich will play professional basketball for the Atlanta Hawks.
Pete did well his rookie season, averaging 22.3 points per game, but he struggled to maintain the high bar that he set himself, entering and exiting slumps far too often. Constant knee injuries also kept Pete off the court for long periods of time, which didn't help his stats. None of the teams Pete played on did particularly well and often finished with a subpar record. In essence, Pete could be described as the best college basketball player to ever play the game and just an alright NBA player.
4's Eyewitness News.
It was a casual pickup basketball game in a California church gymnasium. Pete Maravich was relaxing, doing what he loved the most.
Suddenly, Maravich collapsed. Efforts to resuscitate him were futile, and the man known as the Pistol died of a heart attack.
After retiring from basketball and having the only thing he knew in life suddenly end, Pete didn't know what to do with himself. After suffering one final leg injury, he became a recluse for around 2 years. He was a troubled man. He developed alcoholism and spent a good while trying to find himself after basketball. He tried many different paths, such as yoga and Hinduism, and even got into some taboo practices such as ufology, the study of UFOs. One may consider someone who studies UFOs not all there, which was a good way to describe Pete at this time of his life. Pete finally resolved his issues when he found Christianity. He resonated with the message and would travel the country to share his faith. After recently turning 40 years old, Pete was playing a pickup game at a local church when he met his ultimate fate. Everyone was having fun until Pete collapsed on the floor from an apparent heart attack. He was rushed to the hospital, but there was little that they could do to keep him alive. It was only after his death that doctors realized that Pete was born with a congenital heart defect, which meant he only had one coronary artery.
Overall, Pete led a very successful basketball career, but that was all he ever knew. His illustrious college career was one that will most likely never be repeated by any future player. On the other end, his NBA career was merely average due to his constant injuries and not being able to repeat what he had done in college. The end of his basketball career was too much for him, and when he was sent into the real world, he didn't know what to do with himself. Pete's legend lives on as one of the best basketball players to ever touch the ball. Pete left behind two sons who are constantly reminded of his legacy.
Some say when a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, it says Pete Maravich. Gone, but never forgotten.